We could summarize the requirements of paragraph 8 as presenting the concrete provisions on the ground, in the workplace, and ensuring health and safety. Let's start with the requirements of section 8.1, Operational Planning and Control, and its first subsection, 8.1.1, General. A quick reminder. In the sixth video, we discussed the requirements of identifying risks and opportunities, legal and regulatory requirements, health and safety objectives, and based on all of this, planning actions accordingly. These actions will be translated into concrete actions. For example, workstation layouts, implementation of protective means, and reflections on production or manufacturing processes, for example. The requirements are therefore to identify the set of criteria enabling, on the one hand, to control processes, especially technical processes, and on the other hand, to ensure that health and safety provisions are deployed in accordance with expectations. For example, if it is planned that a workstation be held by people with a level of qualification validated by a clearance, that the equipment at this station have safety elements that make it possible to ensure the safety of workers, it will be expected, again, as an example. The monitoring of clearances to ensure that they are still valid or, if necessary, that a worker can no longer access this workstation. That the safety equipment is maintained and checked, and that in the event of malfunctions, the station is recorded, and that regular checks or field audits monitor compliance with these provisions. Now the paragraph 8.1.2, Elimination of Hazards and Reduction of Risks for S&H. Following the identification of risks, possible actions include the implementation of preventative measures. Personal protective equipment is very often imagined in this respect. ISO 45001 explicitly requires that preventative measures be considered in order of priority from the elimination of the hazard, A, to, lastly, the use of personal protective equipment, E. This is a major contribution of ISO 45001 and of any reasoned approach to safety. PPE is not the first consideration to be given to prevention, because it will be the last line of defense before an injury or the triggering of a pathology on a worker. According to the ISO 45001 standard, there are at least 4 things that must be questioned beforehand. The elimination of danger. For example, the robotization of a previously manual operation. Substitution, like the replacement of a hazardous product with a substitute that would not be hazardous. And the implementation of collective protection, such as what we mentioned above on the physical separation of the flow of self-propelled trucks on the one hand and the circulation of workers on the other hand. The use of administrative preventative measures, for example, the implementation of accreditation and/or training for positions. Thus, PPE should not be the first, let alone the only safety reflex. Now, paragraph 8.1.3, Change Management. Globally, in this paragraph, there are 3 families of requirements. Implement a process allowing the control and conformity of the products and services acquired in relation to the expectations in terms of health and safety. For example, if a product has been selected among others on its absence of dangerousness, it must therefore be ensured that only this product can be supplied. Ensure that external parties have the same control over their health and safety. For example, that they have been made aware of the particular risks of the environment in which they operate, that the risks of coactivity have been taken into account. This is often the subject of prevention plans drawn up prior to any intervention. Ensure that in the event of outsourcing a process, control of health and safety is maintained. For example, if activities are outsourced to an external service provider and are carried out outside the organization's site, it is the organization's responsibility to check that all safety conditions are taken into account. Paragraph 8.2. Emergency preparedness and response. If, despite everything, an emergency situation occurs, for example, an industrial accident, the ability to react in a perfectly adapted way, as quickly as possible and without further increasing the risks and the trauma depends on the preparation for this type of event. The requirement, therefore, includes the implementation of processes to identify potential emergency situations, the reactions to be held in the face of these situations, prior training, as well as regular exercises and tests. Exercises and tests that require feedback in order to improve what can be improved. For example, and for the most traditional, fire evacuation drills that allow, on the day of a real disaster, everyone to know the conduct to adopt in order to increase the efficiency of an evacuation and reduce the panic that it can cause. These drills are followed by debriefings to improve anything that has not been optimal. This principle, which is also fundamental, is similar to another video available on this channel concerning ISO 22301 on business continuity, which I invite you to watch. These are the same principles of anticipation. On the very day of an accident or a disaster, there should be no questions about what to do. The fact of having rehearsed emergency situations beforehand and having asked all possible questions about what these emergency situations might be are the best guarantees that, unfortunately, if they do occur, everyone will have the best chance of reacting correctly. Again, these emergency situations and their testing, exercises, and analyses must be documented.